What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time in Matthew Sponhour and THEO Wash. We have a great episode planned for you all today. We're going to, of course, give you our AG1 tip of the day for the NBA. We're going to talk about some of the quarterback options in the NFL. You know, going into 2023, there's going to be a lot of new free agents, a lot of different options, different teams that need new quarterbacks. We're going to talk about all of those. And of course, make sure you join our AMP Live every Thursday if you want to hear things like the Stay Hot Locks and the NFL Game of the Week. That's on the AMP app live every Thursday at 5:30. AMP app by Amazon. Search for Stay Hot. Give us a follow. Turn on notifications. We'll be live Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But before we get in to all of these great things, Matt, THEO, how are you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good. I was glad to be at the Battle of the Bands yesterday in Oxford, Ohio.
I was glad to have you, man.
And watch, in my opinion, the best band come out victorious. So congratulations to the Tachyons. It was very good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a blast.
It was fun.
Does the name the Tachyons
well,
predate
it's just
Tachyon
Tachyons.
Airplane?
It's just Tachyons.
Oh, does that predate Tachyon Airplane? Is the song named after the band or the band named after the song?
The song is named after the band.
Okay.
Because I finished it with them. I had written most of it up until that point, and then I finished it with them. So I was like, I'll name it after our band.
Okay. I always wondered why you chose Tachyon Airplane. That makes sense. Sense. Yes, congratulations on the big win.
It was fun. It's really like kind of like poetic and cyclical because a year ago we did like the exact same thing at the exact same place with like no equipment, no money, no promotion, and it went decently well. But then like having all of our lighting and all of our own equipment, it was like so much better.
Good.
It was a blast.
Good. And speaking of music, today's Spotify Rap Day, so I always enjoy that. Some people hate it, and they're like, I've seen a couple close friend stories. If I see one more Spotify Wrapped, I'm gonna, bro. It just hates fun. I love seeing everybody's. I love seeing everybody's. Amazing. I love seeing everybody's Spotify Wrapped. I love seeing the little presentation. So I had a good time with that this morning. And thank you to everybody who had Stay Hot on their Spotify Wrapped as their top podcast.
Especially the guy that in their top 5 to 92,000 minutes of Stay Hot. Let me put this into perspective for some people. A 40-hour work week, assuming no vacations, no holidays, is 23% of the year, roughly. Listening to Stay Hot for 92,000 minutes is 17% of the year.
It's a full-time job.
It is insane. It is an insane amount to listen to a podcast.
I question how attentively they were listening those 92,000 minutes, or if it was like a white noise.
I hope they took notes.
We release no more than 104 episodes a year. Because we do twice a week.
I'm sure that we have released exactly that amount of time in episodes this year.
And well, no, because we didn't do one on Thanksgiving. Oh, but also our live streams also go on the RSS. Okay, so maybe
I'm talking about if you combined all the minutes of all the things we've released this year, the number's probably close to that 92,000.
Oh yeah, no,
it's like half that.
I would be stunned if it was half that.
Yeah, I would also be stunned if it was half that. But thank you all for having us on there. It really means a lot whenever I see any Stay Hots on the Wrapped. So love it. My Wrapped, I was happy with it. I know that some people get embarrassed, like Matt, and will never share theirs.
I don't get embarrassed.
Well, who's on it then?
It's just so lame and basic. It's like Kendrick Lamar, the Beatles, Radiohead, Michael Jackson, and somebody else.
But those are like good art. Like there's nothing wrong with that. THEO, what was your most listened to song?
It was Dance Yourself Clean.
That's a great one. That's one of my all-time favorites. I love Dance Yourself Clean.
The live version.
Not Tachyon Airplane. That's not one of your all-time favorites.
Close second.
Certainly was number 2.
Yeah, the live version of Dance Yourself Clean is my number 1. And that song, like as good as the recorded version is, the studio version, the live version is even better. So It's an
That's
amazing
how you know
song, and
that to me is like the sign of a truly remarkably written song is when the live version is better than the studio version. Because that means that an engineer could not make the song better through production.
Yeah,
I think that says
it's
a
an
lot.
incredible one. That was my number one song.
Okay.
So yeah,
mine was Heart of a Dancer by the Happy Fits, which I think is a very fun song.
Not familiar with that one, but
it's okay.
I listened to your little clip.
I was in my
It sounded pretty
era.
good from the little clip you showed on Spotify. I thought it sounded pretty good. But also, shout out Team USA. I just need to say that on the podcast officially for advancing to the group of 16. I see the comments that say talk about the World Cup more. So
no,
let's go. Let's fucking go, man. I just want to say this. This is all I'll say. The second half of that game was the most frustrating, like nerve-wracking half of sports I think I've ever seen. And it is because our manager decided, like, very early in the second half, USA up one, by the way. USA up one. He subs out Dest, and he subs out, I can't remember the other guys. And they put on Shaq Moore and Zimmerman, and they just go full defense mode. They, like, up one. Up one.
How dare
and the entire second half was just a complete barrage by Iran and USA soaking up pressure. The NFL equivalent of this is like in the playoffs being up a touchdown in like the third quarter and like rushing 3 the rest of the game. And
so basically
defense.
So it's be like what the Falcons did.
They
in the Super Bowl when they just like
dying. They were dying to give that game away. They're the better team. They were controlling the ball perfectly in the first half. And then in the second half, they're just like, we're up one. And a tie, they lose. Like, if it's 1-1, they lose. They needed all 3 points. So I don't want to get too mad after a win. Dest played fantastic. Obviously, Pulisic gave it all for the country. So it was a great performance, but oh my God, the second half of that game, like, please never do that again. But I think they will. So that's my World Cup talk. Now we could get on with it.
All right. Do you think they'll win on Saturday?
I think they have a good chance. Against the Netherlands. I don't think the Netherlands it's not like we're running into Brazil or Spain or, a team like that, or Argentina, who's up 2-0 now. Like, I think that they've got a decent chance. I don't know if they will win. I think I'd give them like a very feisty underdogs type of chance. So, yeah.
No, that is the most we have talked about soccer. Like, in all of our episodes combined, this is the most we've talked about soccer.
Yeah.
And all of that. So,
well, it's deserving. It was an exciting 1-0 game. They do exist.
An exciting 3-0 college football game.
It's not like that, man. Because once it's like King of the Hill. It's like once, everybody's trying to fight and claw and get to like the top position. And once you're up there, you need to defend it. That's what being up 1-0 is like in soccer. It's like you have this lead and now there's this like furious defense and someone's trying to take it from it. It's not necessarily like a track meet. It's like you are up 1-0. The defense of that lead is exciting, right? A more boring soccer game would be 3-0 where it's over. A 1-0 soccer game or even a 0-0 soccer game, I think it can be pretty exciting, even if there's no goals being scored, because it can just get it really,
actually, a track meet does seem like a decent comparison. Like, being up, like having a decent lead, like a 10 to 20 meter lead on someone going into the final stretch in a 400, and then they start to like catch up a little bit, and that can be like really nerve wracking.
Yeah.
So I can kind of get behind that.
It's if the game is close, it's exciting. That's kind of the thing with soccer to me. Yeah, I know that the goals. It's not like a 0-0 soccer game is nothing like a 0-0 football game or like a 80-80 basketball game where it's just ugly. I think that it can be a little bit different. But anyway.
Okay. Anyway, let's get into the NBA tip of the day, brought to you by our good friends over at AG1. Look, it's no secret that I care about my health. How else could I go out and be Battle of the Bands champions back to back without keeping up with my health? And let me tell you about a product I use every day. I started taking AG1 just so I could, keep up all the things that I do. And with just one scoop of AG1, you're getting 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day the right way. This delicious blend of ingredients supports gut health, boosts your immune system, nervous system, energy, recovery, focus, and even aging. For me, I just throw a scoop in a glass of water before I start my day because I feel like it just gives me that energy boost I need to keep going. And the boost to mental clarity and alertness is really why over 7,000 people have given Athletic Greens a 5-star review. And if you're like me, on a college student's budget, you get all of this for less than $3 a day. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/stayhot. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/stayhot to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. The NBA tip of the day. Matt, what is it?
It's don't trust Minnesota sports.
And why should we not trust Minnesota sports?
Well, because THEO has often said they do not do very good. And I think right now with Karl Anthony Towns going out, wow, the Timberwolves are struggling. It's looking like another Timberwolves sports moment where it's like, on paper, this should be great, including myself.
That is the ultimate Minnesota sports thing. It's always on paper, like the Vikings, these past, on paper. Yeah. Even right now, 9-2 on paper.
Yeah, they're going to win the NFC North, bro.
They're going to get first rounded, man. And it's not even hate towards, it's just, that's the way it goes. And the Timberwolves, same thing, on paper.
With the Timberwolves.
They end up getting the 1 seed.
then they've got that. The Timberwolves, they're in serious trouble. I mean, right now it's not a talent thing; it's a chemistry thing. And when you have one of your most important players going out for a super long amount of time, or not a super long, but a month and a half, you're really, really delaying the timeline to start getting things together. And who knows? A lot of their problems, I watched Thinking Basketball's video on this that he posted just a little while ago. A lot of their problems just come from defensive chemistry and how it's difficult scheme-wise to have both Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert out there. So I almost wonder if not having to worry about that maybe makes some things a little bit easier on them. Although it's hard to bet on, like, well, one of your best players is out and you'll get better. That's not super typical, but
respect the Ewing theory, please.
Yeah, the Ewing theory. It's I don't know. At some point, they're going to have to get, like, even if they do look a little bit better without Karl Anthony Towns, or the defensive chemistry is a little bit easier to make work, I should say. It's not like all of a sudden that problem is gone, although I'm certain that you would see on Twitter, is Karl Anthony Towns the problem the whole time? It's like, it's not really that simple, but I don't know, man. I don't know. They've got problems.
I agree with you. I think there is a chance that they figure some things out without their two bigs, like with just Gobert and not having to worry about Cat. Maybe that unlocks, Anthony Edwards to take a little bit more authority. Maybe he performs better in the next 2 months or something like that. I could see a world where that kind of Ewing theory or the wounded tiger theory is another one where teams kind of step up their game when their star player gets hurt. It's like a mentality thing, which is honestly what I buy a little bit more than like the Ewing theory, where it's just like, I'm not even totally sure all the details in that, but it's not so much because your player went out, like everything works, your best player went out, everything works better, but it's more everyone kind of steps up their mindset when they have to overcome that adversity is kind of where I'm at sometimes. But we'll see if that's the case with this Timberwolves team, because mindset and overcoming adversity seems to be one of their issues, perhaps. But
it's a huge issue. I mean, you see how Anthony Edwards is just like standing around on some plays. I think that's so incredibly weak to do at 21, 22 years old, 15, 20 games into the season. That's weak. And I think his big problem right now is that the paint is not as wide open. Last year it's like, okay, well, Anthony Edwards is really not that good at passing the ball in the pick and roll. So when even when you have a great screener and a great guy to cut, it kills you because he can't get the ball to them very consistently. You've seen that stat about how often he's passing to Gobert. That is not a Gobert is bad stat. That is an Anthony Edwards needs to evolve as a playmaker stat. And last year, the paint was wide open because you could just stick Karl Anthony Towns in the corner and or wherever, and he can space out, and it works great. This year, you need to be able to utilize the pick and roll to create space inside because you got Gobert running the 5. And I don't know if that's going to get fixed, but it's got to.
It's going to be a massive turning point in this season. Obviously, not just because of the talent, but just of where they are as a franchise and where their head is at. Like, they can either pack it in, they can fold. It was a disappointing start, and now Cat is hurt. Maybe they totally collapse here, but maybe they step it up a little bit and they say, well, Cat is gone now. The season is at immediate risk now. If we don't step up, I mean, this is one of the most disappointing teams in recent history to put all this together and then to fall flat on our face like that. Like, maybe that lights a fire. And maybe, without the two bigs in the paint, like it starts to click a little bit more. I could see a whole different range of outcomes from this, but you're right. At the end of the day, the best version, even if they do look a little better and they step up with Cat out, at the end of the day, the best version of this Timberwolves team does have Cat on the floor. And you would rather them figure out the Cat stuff defensively and maybe struggle over the next 2 months than maybe look really good without Cat over the next 2 months and then be 2 months behind when he does come back and from like a cohesion standpoint. So I don't know. It doesn't make me feel all too different about them. I still think they can contend for the play-ins and maybe get in a playoff series. I think they can overcome it to that extent. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It'll be a very interesting mental test.
To me, this kind of feels like when everyone was saying, "Oh, the Browns are better without Odell," and I'm like, no, you would rather the Browns. Like, Odell's a good player. Odell doesn't make the Browns worse. That was just a Baker problem.
That's kind of not a terrible comp. It's like you should, but being bad with Odell is the problem within itself.
Yeah,
I really don't think the Timberwolves are going to. I could see a world where their defensive chemistry improves, but they're already a team that has been shooting. Now you're getting rid of Karl Anthony Towns, who also hasn't been shooting that great this year, but it still is way less spacing. I don't know. There's definitely a world where I don't know how many games I guess he's going to miss a pretty good handful of games. They're already outside of the plans as of now. So then you're going to have to bring Cat back. Maybe you're 5 or 6 games back or 4 or 3 games back from the plans, trying to work your way back up. They could be in a really bad spot. There's no guarantee they get to 47 wins. In fact, right now it probably looks not super great. So don't bet on Minnesota sports.
Yeah, don't bet on Minnesota, no matter how good it looks on paper. And you could bet on them to make the playoffs, maybe, but the higher the hopes get, the more likely it is they let you down. They're the team that went to 4 Super Bowls and lost all of them. Like they will find a way. They will find a way. It's not outright bad. It's never just outright horrible, but it's always looks good, doesn't perform well.
They're good, not great. They're good, not great.
Right. They've always got a lot of potential. So that's how I feel about Minnesota sports. And it'll be fascinating to watch the Timberwolves without Cat. And if they do perform better over the next 2 months, man, the trade dialogue with him is going to get awesome on Twitter. It's going to be at the very least, a very entertaining offseason of Karl Anthony Towns dialogue. If they look pretty good without him in the next 2 months, and then maybe with him, they fall short of a playoff.
I think it's unlikely. I do.
You think they're just going to look bad?
I think the offensive struggles are not being fixed by getting Cat, and that's the thing. It's not they're just struggling on defense; they're struggling on offense too. So maybe they just start shooting better. There's a possibility that happens where it's like they're kind of just in a team wide slump a little bit. And they got to work themselves out of that, but I don't know. We'll see.
I saw someone. I can't remember if they were quoting, but I saw like a YouTube or maybe it was a TikTok comment. It was like, the word potential has earned a lot of bad players a lot of money.
Your potential is going to get me fired. That's maybe as we talk about the quarterbacks in this class a little bit later. Your potential is going to get me fired is a quote that always kind of rings in my head. Yeah.
If we're going to talk about quarterbacks, the Green Bay Packers are in an interesting spot. This is not the best iteration of them that we've seen over the last decade, as you can
No,
No, it's not.
No, it's
some
not.
would say it's the worst.
Some would say they would say that, but
It's borderline top 10 over the last decade.
borderline top 10. At some point, they're going to have to, make a decision as to what they're doing at quarterback, whether it be, Aaron Rodgers leaves or they have to, side with either Jordan Love or drafting a guy or trading for someone else. Or if they're just like, oh, I guess we're just going to hope to God that Aaron Rodgers gets good with these receivers or makes these receivers like Hall of Fame caliber guys or something. Theo, what do you think the world is with the Packers quarterback situation at this point?
Well, he's going to play next week. He's going to play next week against Chicago. He's going to get right. He's going to, this Chicago team is really terrible on defense. I mean, they have lost not Jaquan Brisker. Maybe they have lost Jaquan Brisker. They've lost Eddie Jackson. I know Brisker has been hurt. Kyler Gordon, he's been hurt. Like, there's just no talent on this defense anymore. Rodgers loves to play the Chicago Bears. Obviously, I own you and all of that. If he can go, he's going. And a quote from him is like,
it would stink is like if he was hurt and they lost because he couldn't get it done.
Well, then we get to see Jordan Love. But I wish if I was Green Bay, the ideal scenario here is, Aaron, you are injured. Your ribs are hurt or whatever it was, your upper body injury that you sustained against the Eagles. There's that. Your thumb is broken. You're not playing as well as you usually do. The season is like, yes, we're not mathematically eliminated, but this season is over. Like, just take a seat, buddy. We're going to get Jordan Love. We're going to let him play the horrible Bears. And, at least we're going to at least get his trade value up, because I do think Rodgers probably plays for the Green Bay Packers next season. If they were to cut him, or if they were to trade him, the dead cap is $45 million or $40 million in dead cap. You're not saving any money doing that. You're just getting him off the team. And maybe they're sick of him and maybe they're willing to eat that to just get him off the team and start Love. I guess maybe that's not the most shocking thing in the world, but it's just been such an injury-plagued year, and Christian Watson is starting to break out. Romeo Doubs, I think, could be something in the future. I wonder if they add another receiver somewhere and let these guys develop and just run it back next year, and then one more year of Rodgers, and that really is it. But with Love, he looked good last week. He hit a ridiculous hole shot to Aaron Jones. That was a great throw. You could really see the ball jump out of his hands when he throws it. He's got a lot of arm strength, a lot of talent, some mobility. And they've said, like, he is leaps and bounds better than where he was last year. And you could kind of see that in this game. Darius Slay said this today. He looked like Aaron, low key. So I don't know. I think at some point they get mathematically eliminated, and maybe with like 2 weeks left to go, we see Love, and then probably do the whole thing again next year is probably where I'm at with the most likely outcome. In terms of what I would do, it's pretty tough for me to swallow like paying Rodgers $40 million to not be on the team. I do think healthy, he could be a good quarterback. I think we've seen flashes of that this year. If he can keep his thumb healthy, and if Christian Watson develops into what he looks like he is these past couple weeks, if he can be that guy consistently, and you have that great wide receiver and another year of development for Doubs, and maybe bring in another guy through the draft or a tight end or something. And I could definitely see running this back and having it be much more successful with a different defensive coordinator next season and contending for the division again. Maybe that's crazy, but I don't think it is completely over for Rodgers. And, if he next year you can get out of that contract after 2023, I see the potential out on the contract thing. And like after that, maybe then you go to Love, and it could be like a 1 year kind of prove it thing for him because I think he would be at the last year of his rookie deal. Or maybe you'd have to pay him without having seen much, but I think you could maybe pull that off just because you haven't seen much. He wouldn't be that expensive. So that's kind of where I'm at with this team. I do think Rodgers will be back next year. If Love looks great at the end of this thing, they could potentially maybe trade him. But I don't know. I think it's kind of going to be the same thing again. And I don't think that's the worst idea.
Yeah. It just seems like a stagnant lateral. Like you're not.
Yeah,
really
but I mean,
anywhere.
he signed the contract, right?
Yeah,
it's tough,
right?
If
I don't
Aaron
think it's
Rodgers
necessarily
wasn't
that stagnant. I disagree.
Yeah.
They can add a receiver and get a new defensive coordinator, and they'd be a fairly different team. They've just not had a good year, and they've been all beat up. I agree. I think they give it one more year, and then it's time to go to Love.
After 2023, if they pick up Love's 5th year option, which I think that deadline has not happened yet. If they pick up his 5th year option will be 2024, and that will be taking over the reins from Rodgers. It'll almost be like a 1-year prove it deal, and he won't be that old at that point. I mean, he is 24 now. He'd be 25. Really? He would be 26 by the time he took over, which is like as old as probably Burrow is right now. And you wouldn't consider Burrow to be like necessarily super old. I mean, you still have plenty of years of love.
You know that Burrow's good.
I'm just saying he wouldn't be. You can wait 5 years to start
Burrow,
Love, and he's still only 26.
Burrow broke like all the college football records.
I'm not saying he's as good as Joe Burrow is. I'm just saying that he's still a relatively young quarterback. He's like Burrow age, and you don't think of Burrow as like, oh, he's too, I don't know.
Yeah, but a good quarterback being old, you don't have to worry about him getting.
You don't understand I don't. 26 is not that old. If his first year as a starter is at age 26, like that's not too far off from where Burrow was as when he started his first game. Rodgers was, or Hendon Hooker this year, or starting a quarterback at 26. Like you would rather start them when they're 22 and have them be awesome, but. Like if they're 26, obviously Burrow wasn't 26, but he was an older rookie, and you can kind of rationalize Love is the same thing. So I think that's what they do. We got one more year of Rodgers. You pick up Love's 5th year option. You play him in his 5th year, and if he's good, you pay him, and if he's not, you got to start over. That to me, bang.
In the case of Rodgers might be gone, he might be leaving the Packers. Rumors, I tend to lean that. He will not leave, because as of right now, that's been the right choice every single time. It's always over talked about because it would be such an exciting move, and like everybody wants it to happen who isn't the Packers, and maybe even some Packers fans want to. And I think it totally like makes sense this year, but the dead cap would be killer unless they were like, are you going to field a super good team? I mean, I looked at his number, it said 99 million in dead cap. I understand that's not going to all hit their books, but it's like, dude, I just think it's more likely they hold on to him for 1 year. But I mean, who knows? Maybe the Jets offer you a really crazy trade package. Maybe
if you get the Godfather package, you take it. If they offer you the Russ package and you get 1st round picks for 3 years, but after the Russ thing, no one's going to offer the Russ package. Yeah, no one's going to offer the Russ package.
Not for Aaron Rodgers, who's like 40.
Not for Aaron Rodgers. They might offer the Russ package for Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow.
Lamar.
But yeah, no.
Well, this is actually a good question. Okay, so after next season, he'll be 41 years old. Who is giving up a bunch of 1st round draft picks for a 41-year-old quarterback?
I don't know, but. Maybe they don't. Maybe he retires after he's 41. I don't know, but I'm sure someone would trade something for him, and maybe you just at that point you're just like, let's just get out of here. If it doesn't go that well, and if he's amazing, maybe that changes things. But who knows?
Speaking of quarterbacks that might retire, Tom Brady is going to be a free agent this offseason. What do the Buccaneers do? Because I mean, let's be real. What are the odds Brady comes back? Like, real?
Nothing. He's not re-signing there. Hell
no shot. Literally no chance.
Yeah.
So they have. They're going to have
Kyle Trask.
Good Lord! You cannot start the year. You cannot go into 2023 with Kyle Trask as your starting quarterback. No, you cannot.
You could.
And you would be,
he was a second round pick.
Okay. I remember I know I said the Saints would go 0-17. If they started Kyle Trask, they might go 0-17.
It's Kyle Trask doesn't dress for games. He's the third string behind Blaine Gabbert. So for him to go from behind Blaine Gabbert to the answer at quarterback would be a hell of a year 3 leap. I didn't like him going in the second round. To me was bonkers. Like watching his college film, his arm strength looked like, it looked like you and me throwing the ball out there. That thing looked like it was leaving. It looked like it was filled with helium and was like leaving his hand in slow motion. His footwork was a mess. He had Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney, and I legitimately think like Kyle Pitts had a crazy part of the reason Kyle Pitts was so well regarded as a prospect and why I loved him so much is because I knew how good he was at adjusting to bad balls, because Kyle Trask was throwing him the football in just the weirdest fucking places.
Also,
and he would just
imagine how good
stick out his hand.
Imagine how good Florida could have been if they had like anyone else.
Felipe Franks, baby. Imagine them with Felipe Franks.
One can dream.
Could have won the national title, man.
I don't know.
Kyle Trask did not start. He did not start in high school. Kyle Trask did not start in high school. And he was a second round pick because Derek King was the starter.
How do you not start in high school and then you're like playing starting quarterback for an SEC school? Like, how does that happen?
He had another good quarterback on his roster. I don't know
Derek
what the Buccaneers are going to do. They could take a shot on somebody kind of mid to late if they really like somebody in the draft. Or they could say, we have some really nice pieces here. If we get another quarterback like a Brissett or somebody who we feel like can kind of manage the offense a little bit, we could be all right. But a lot of their problems come from their interior offensive line being pretty rough. And if they don't have a running game and they have a quarterback who's just a game manager, I don't really know how. That's like one receiver injury away from this offense is really bad with very few, very little upside. They're also kind of an older roster at this point that's been built to win a Super Bowl that they won a few years ago. And you almost wonder if maybe they would lean towards leaning into the rebuild, but teams very rarely do that in the NFL. But if there was going to be a team that was like, let's lean into the rebuild a year before we hit a very good draft class quarterback-wise, maybe it would be them, although I think that's pretty unlikely, especially if they get a new coach. Then you can really get away with it.
It's tough to project where they'll be because of the coaching situation. You don't really know what direction they want to go in, because what they currently have is a very tough offense to execute. It's a lot of stuff down the field. It's a lot of empty. Tom Brady attempts more passes than just about anybody in this offense, and there's no running game. This is like the second year in a row
where he's going to lead the league in pass attempts.
And it's not the easy buttons either. It's not roll out. It's not play action. It's drop back. We're reading high lows. We're reading, dagger concepts and sails and all this shit down the field. It's not something that just some random guy can waltz into and game manage, right? That's not the direction of this thing. So, but will that be the structure of the offense next year, or will Bulls get fired? So it's tough to know. But the other complicating factor of this is their cap situation, and they're currently $50 million below the cap. All right. It's them and the Saints.
Contracts kills you, man. The idea that it doesn't ever come back to bite you is so bogus. And now they're in a point where it's hard to tear it down because you need the guys that you currently have on the roster to restructure their contracts again so they can get back under the cap. Except they're going to have to do that so much. Like, it eventually is going to come back to bite them. I haven't really looked at their numbers altogether, but yeah.
They very easily could still win this division and get a pick in the 20s, right? But given their cap situation and their quarterback situation, they kind of need a rookie, because it's tough to pay a proven vet when your cap situation looks like this, right? It's a lot easier to bring in a dirt cheap option at quarterback. So that's why I don't think it'll be Trask, but once you get into the second round, the Tanner McKees of the world, the Penix Juniors of the world, I don't think drafting Trask in the second or quarterback in the second round a couple years ago was a bad idea, because you would like to have a second round guy to come in. Like Derek Carr was a second round guy. Andy Dalton was a second round guy. Colin Kaepernick was a second round guy. Someone like that, where it's like, okay, there maybe there's a fine starter here in the second round. Even like Davis Mills in the third round. Like, okay, like someone like that maybe. But I just don't think Trask is
cheap.
They're cheap, and with years of development in the system, like maybe they turn out to be like okay, and you have someone there. Like I didn't hate maybe drafting a guy in the second round. It's just I really just don't like Trask.
Yeah,
I really don't think
no
Trask
good.
is any good. So that's kind of where I'm at with them, and I don't know. I think it's possible. I think we could maybe in a disaster world like be looking at Kyle Trask or Blaine Gabbert like starting quarterback next year, because it's just tough to do anything else. But
So at least
if they were to invest,
if that would only, I think, work if they roll back with like the same coaching staff, because then you're like, well, we need a guy that's existed in this system before. We can't bring in someone completely brand new. Like Brissett, I think would be like a good option.
I think he's going to get paid too much, to be completely honest.
That's it.
I don't think the
Bucs will be able to afford him.
The real problem is that here's my new coaching job. You start Kyle Trask year one. It's just like, that's not a sell. This team does not have, here's this team's out. I'm looking at their cap right now. They voided Brady's contract, right? Or they restructured it. So if he's not on the team next year, they owe him $35 million. The option here is you have to restructure more contracts. Here's my guess is that you have to restructure a bunch more contracts, wait it out a little bit, and just get these guys off the books. Restructuring contracts kind of marries you to keeping that guy for a while oftentimes. And I think they're now kind of, maybe they have to keep a lot of their guys unless they can make trades that get other teams to take their guaranteed money. But they're in a tough spot.
or maybe they trade up, maybe they trade way up, because if you were to add a good quarterback to there's talent there. Chris Godwin is good. Tristan Wirfs is good. Mike Evans is good. Like Donovan Smith, and you would get Jensen back. Like there is a world where this is a decent place to land if you add a really smart head coach or offensive coordinator. Like this would not be a bad place to develop a quarterback. So I'm sure it's on their mind. But then the thing is, like, if you trade way up and it doesn't work, then you don't have any assets and you're an aging roster. So it's risky, right. But I almost wonder if they don't trade up into the top 5. But right now, I think I project them starting someone young next year. I think it's a decent place to develop, and I think it makes the most sense from their cap perspective. So I would anticipate maybe it's Trask. Maybe they like him a lot more than I do. I don't know. Maybe he's developed, or maybe they draft someone like Penix or I don't know if Hooker would be ready. So Bo Nix, Tanner McKee. There's a bunch of, I think we could see a bunch of guys in the second round next year, and same with the Colts, or maybe even Washington next season. Like I do think maybe there could be some second round players that we see getting some burn next year more than we've seen in the past. Bo Nix wouldn't be a bad idea, though. I really don't even think that would be a bad idea. The guy is talented and playing a lot better.
He has turned it on. I have not been the biggest Bo Nix supporter that's ever lived.
It's okay. Like,
he has actually played pretty decent this year. He has had a fairly good season, and he's got enough talent, so where I understand taking the shot on him.
Yeah, could definitely see that.
I wouldn't be opposed. How much time do you think you spend looking at a screen? Because between my phone, laptop, monitors, TV, tablet, I can almost certainly say I spend at least half of my day on an electronic device. But the truth is, whether it's working on your computer or watching TikToks before bed, that amount of blue light exposure can be truly damaging to your eyes. And studies have shown that exposure to blue light from these devices can lead to things like headaches, eye fatigue, blurry vision, and even trouble sleeping. But worry not. I'm happy to say that our friends over at Felix Gray can help. Their blue light glasses filter 15 times more blue light that can make, screen time tough on eyes and disruptive to sleep. But are you still not convinced? Well, what if I told you that wearing these glasses could instantly get you looking more drippy? Look, I got a pair on right now, and they look sick. They fit my face really well. I always get compliments on when I wear them, and that's just the perks that come with wearing Felix Gray glasses. So if you want the best prescription or non-prescription blue light glasses on the market, use our URL at felixgrayglasses.com/stayhot. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. FelixGrayGlasses.com/stay hot. We have to talk about Zach Wilson again. At some point, we have to do it. They got benched for Mike White, and they look good. So the question is, like, what do they do? Do they roll into next year with, because I mean, they're probably still going to make the playoffs, right? At this rate, it looks like they probably will. They're not rolling with Zach Wilson next year. Like, they're not. Like, I'm sorry.
I see them as the most aggressive team that currently does not have a quarterback. No, I don't think any other team would be like, they're like, we are right there to being a really, really good team, which we have not been for a very long time. Yes. But the question is more, what options are really open to them? Is Aaron Rodgers a possibility? Maybe, but that's also maybe a little bit more unlikely now that we've talked about it. Guys like Lamar Jackson will get a lot of hype. I would say it's incredibly unlikely that Lamar does not get franchise tag.
Yeah, the Ravens will not let him go.
And same with Geno Smith. I'd say he'd have to ask for a ton, and even then they would probably just franchise tag him. Jimmy Garoppolo could be a possibility, but you wonder if the 49ers are maybe more aggressive in keeping him, because as much as they probably like Trey Lance, he hasn't played and they have a very talented roster. They would be in the exact same situation if they started Trey Lance and he wasn't good. And granted, it's more of a question mark than whether or not Zach Wilson's good right now. But I wonder if they're really going to be like, well, it's just Trey Lance, and if this doesn't work, or if he gets hurt again, we will just suck. Because they think they can win with Garoppolo.
Trey Lance is a very interesting prospect that we didn't talk about with the Bucs, but there's a world where the 49ers like win the Super Bowl, and they're just like, well, I guess we gave and by this point, all the picks have run its course, really, from the Trey Lance deal. So if they win the Super Bowl, they might just be like, Jimmy played better this year than he ever has. He's cut down on the turnovers. Like, let's get another first round pick for Trey Lance, who's basically like still a rookie at this point.
I've seen this Trey Lance storyline before, man. And it always ends with, oh, he's looked good. And then they get to the Super Bowl and then they lose.
The Garoppolo. So I don't know. There's also
I'm not saying I'm predicting that, but that is a quarterback name that could potentially be out there for a team like the Bucs or Colts or something that would like to invest in a young guy finally.
I also think that I think it's unlikely that Mike White just lights the world on fire for the rest of the season with no flaws. But if he does, I almost wonder if they're like, well, we have Mike White as kind of our Jimmy Garoppolo, and then we have Zach Wilson still if he starts looking better in practice, and that's what we're going to roll with. But that would maybe make me a little bit more nervous. Or they could draft a guy, but I think that's fairly unlikely. I don't think they'll be in position to do it.
They only have one first-round pick, correct? They have their own and no one else's?
They have their own first-round pick, yeah.
I think they will not draft the guy unless they really happen to love somebody, but that wouldn't make a ton of sense. Or they could get a Brissett, somebody like that. But
the Mike White problem is, and we talked about this on our Tuesday live. He's played 2 good games. He's played in 5 games, and only in 2 of them have been good, right? So it's like, in order for them to consider rolling with him next, he would have to play the entire season. The whole rest of the season would have to be spectacular.
And he is someone, like you said last year, Blaiden, oh my God, Mike White, he played great. And the Bears game was great, but the Bears, they suck. They're terrible. And Mike White has had some really good throws. The throw to Garrett Wilson that went for a touchdown was a very nice throw from him. And against the Bengals, I remember really being impressed with kind of how his accuracy and just how quickly he pulls the trigger once he sees something. He's very, very willing to just get that. He doesn't hold it. He really gets rid of it. But he followed up that Bengals game last year where he had all those yards with some real stinkers. So I don't think you're comfortable enough to bet on him yet. We've talked about the Jets before. Maybe Brady doesn't retire.
Maybe Brady. Yeah, that was the other one.
Maybe Brady doesn's retire and he comes to New York. That would definitely be a possibility. I do think Brady is still playing some decent football right now.
And the interesting thing about Brady we've talked about is he brings guys with him. Right.
He brings guys with him. Yeah, so that is a possibility. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, like if the 49ers do not like win the Super Bowl and Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't set things on fire during the playoffs, which, you know, last year's playoff run was abysmal for him. Like if he's bad and they lose, like he could definitely be gone and they'd be like, okay, Trey, get it. Like here you go. And a reunion with LaFleur and Saleh to just kind of keep things on the rails for a while. Like that really would not surprise me. Maybe they go back to Wilson. Who the hell knows? But to me, I think if I had to bet on anything, it's probably Garoppolo for them.
But
if I had to bet on anything,
here's the thing. I don't like that. I don't like Garoppolo. I know that we've been like, well, coaches can think they can make it work. Well, you're giving yourself such a low ceiling. It's like the 49ers are a team that's very, very talented that needs a quarterback, and they don't want Garoppolo. So why do you want Garoppolo? I understand that it's better than what you have. Yeah. But then the only thing that has a super high ceiling is either getting one of those really great vets, which is possible, but you have to realize that the odds on each one of those is somewhere between 15 and 10%. It's just like Brady's going to come here. Okay. You know, it's like it could happen, or you're going to draft another guy. And I think that's unlikely. So I think at quarterback, the solution for the Jets is hitting when you drafted a guy number 2 overall. That's what I would have done personally.
Real solution.
And it's really hard to overcome it. It really is hard to overcome this.
They missed. I mean, Joe, and it's so tough because Joe Douglas has done they've done a great job drafting. Garrett Wilson looks like a hit. Breece Hall, Sauce, Jermaine Johnson has done some nice things this year. I don't think he's nearly at the level of their other rookies, but I shouldn't even say Elijah Moore because he demanded a trade. But he's been good.
He is a good player. It's just the Wilson stuff has been. I mean, nobody was catching anything with Wilson throwing. It was tough.
Michael Carter has been decent. Like they have a pretty good draft history, but like man, if they would have saw what we saw in Zach Wilson, where it's like maybe don't fall in love with just the throwing motion and actually like look at who he was playing and draft Fields. Like I think almost everyone had Fields as QB2. Like it was Lawrence and Fields. As QB1
I think a fair amount of people had Lance at 2. I think Lance is also a very, very good prospect. A lot of people
liked Wilson. Who's Chris Sims? Chris Sims
loved him.
And he's never been wrong before.
He's never been wrong.
Look, I mean, there was a fair amount of people had Wilson too, but after the Clemson game, it was Lawrence and Fields. That was the most common take. If they would have done that, like I would feel a lot better about where they were at. And Fields, maybe he's someone who maybe didn't quite fit in the Shanahan structure because he's someone who will kind of freestyle a lot. And the Shanahan structure is basically just like, do what we tell you to. It's very rigid. So I guess I get maybe not selecting Fields to be the guy for that system, but I don't know, man. Like the way he looks right now and how talented he is, he definitely looks a lot better than Wilson. And
well, I mean,
you would have graded higher than
you
Wilson,
would have taken Lance or Fields or Mac Jones at this point over him. Although Mac Jones was obviously not considered anywhere near the tier of those other guys, but it was just a miss, man. It's just a miss, and that's just gonna.
And you could have seen it coming too. It wasn't that hard to see this coming either. Like. Maybe not this bad, but it wasn't that hard if you really, really looked. So, yeah, big miss there. I don't know. I guess you hope to God that Mike White works out. That's probably their best option. But Brady still gives you. I know he'd be really, really fucking old at that point, but I still think that is a possibility. That
it's possible. It's so possible. Like you can. That's probably of all the vets, honestly, maybe the most likely one.
Because it's like he is a free agent this year. Like he will not be on the Bucs. He's in an open market. If he wants to, all he needs is to say, I want to play one more year. And like the Jets just become completely obvious. That's all that needs to happen is Tom Brady deciding to come back, which is not like crazy far-fetched. I mean, he's already given up everything to play.
If you were Brady, where would you go?
New York. I'd go to the New York Jets. I would go play there with Garrett Wilson in the defense.
And he's from he grew up a 49ers fan.
Dude, if you could go to the 49ers, that team is loaded. And then maybe that makes Lance on the move. Or maybe you're like, screw it. Now we've got Maybe Lance is kind of get the Jordan Love treatment a little bit, which is not the end of the world considering that he's like the youngest player ever drafted or whatever.
Right.
I know he's not quite that, but he's up there. He's real young.
He'd
be starting when he was 24, 25. Would not be the worst thing in the world. I don't know. I'd think about it if I were him.
I would think about it too. But definitely San Francisco and New York, it could definitely come down between those two teams if Brady decides to test free agency again. I could very easily see it happening because yes, Garoppolo would be a pretty natural fit and make them a pretty good regular season team. But you're right, Matt. If he screws up in the playoffs again and the 49ers lose, like adding him to the Jets literally just makes you the 49ers and sets you up for playoff heartbreak again. And it's like you want to shoot a little bit higher than that. So right. I still think it's possible. I still think that teams like might say, well, especially if you're the Jets where, they haven't had any success, but they're having success now, but they have the longest playoff drought in the NFL where they might just be like, let's just get there. All right, let's just get there. Let's take Jimmy Garoppolo and just get there. But if they get there this season, maybe they'll shoot a little bit higher. So yeah. I could definitely see that. I could see a lot of things going down with the Jets, but I think a rookie is off the table with them. I don't think they would draft one in the first round at all. I think if they want potential or talent, they would just roll with Zach Wilson again next season. So who knows?
A team we haven't really talked about a ton, I feel like, as far as quarterback situations go, is the Giants with Daniel Jones.
I'm out on Daniel Jones.
That's like,
Daniel
okay.
Jones. Nope. I see this. I do not agree. This is another thing where it's like Goff almost, but I don't even know if he's quite at Goff's level. I understand it. Like he's added some stuff, like the running has been nice and the receivers are so bad. And if you gave him real good receivers, this would probably be more of a debate. But dude, we're in year 4. Let's, you didn't pick up the 5th-year option for a reason. He has not been lighting the world on fire. And I think as the season goes on, I think if the Jets start to trail off, this will become less and less of a discussion. But you need a quarterback. The Jets need the Giants need a quarterback, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because situation matters so much for a guy. And I mean, who is the best wide receiver that Daniel Jones has ever played with?
Sterling Shepard, I guess.
It's probably
Darius Slayton.
It's probably Sterling Shepard. Honestly, like that could easily be it. It's Kadarius Toney for that one game. It's not great. So, and this year, I mean, he is 12th in the EPA CPOE composite.
Where's Mariota?
Marcus Mariota, he's 17th. Brissett is 10th. Tannehill is 9th. Yeah. I could see a world where Jones is Tannehill. I could see a world where if you actually gave him like a wide receiver and an offensive line that is like, okay, because I mean, the situation has been awful where he becomes Tannehill-y, and he can run a little bit and he's accurate enough on the like play action stuff that he can execute stuff like that. If you could get him an AJ Brown, if you could get him he has a Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, but if you get him a better offensive line or an AJ Brown or something like that, I could definitely see him, hanging around, that pretty efficient.
There's a million guys you could do that with, though. Right. Then go get yourself Brissett.
I understand
he could be a Tannehill, who is the reason why the Titans are not serious Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah,
right. I understand it. Like the 32nd best quarterback has to start for a team. There's probably not going to be any great options open for the Giants, but I disagree with the idea that it's like Daniel Jones long term. I
disagree with that. I disagree with that as well. And I think if you were to like make a compilation of like top 10 Daniel Jones plays, it wouldn't look like anything too. Like he hasn't like even when Darnold never hasn't really amounted to anything. So maybe this is,
but
a bad
Darnold's
example,
made some like ridiculous plays.
Darnold's, even when he was on a horrible situation when like Quincy Enunwa was his wide receiver 1 in New York and Adam Gase was his head coach, there were some pretty jaw dropping plays that were like, whoa, this guy is crazy talented. Like, Daniel Jones has never really flashed that ceiling. So I would be very interested in
long run where he tripped. That's probably
He's got good straight line speed.
He's got good straight line speed. And I think with Daboll, I think one thing that might interest me is because if you move off from him, like maybe you re-sign Daniel Jones to something long-term-ish, a couple of years, but it's not super expensive.
I can see.
And then maybe you bring in Anthony Richardson, who I think would be a pretty good Daboll fit, who worked with he worked with Josh Allen, obviously, who was crazy talented and really athletic. And, they eventually, Daboll worked with him a lot and developed him into the best quarterback in the league, obviously, or at least one of them. So a running quarterback is very important to this offense. There's a reason why before this season I was like, bet the Daniel Jones rushing over. I promise it'll hit. It hit like with weeks and weeks to spare. Like, it is a very important part to what Daboll does when he was working with Jalen Hurts down in Alabama. And then, of course, running it all the time with Josh Allen. That kind of was something that really unlocked that offense, was how frequently they ended up running with him. And now it's going with Daniel Jones. So a dual threat quarterback like Anthony Richardson, and let him develop a little bit behind Jones, who can kind of keep things afloat. I don't hate that idea if you can get him in like the second round, and who knows if he'll even declare. But I could definitely see the Giants taking a freak, like whether that be a total development project, but whether that be like a Malik Willis tier or Anthony Richardson tier project that that maybe Daboll could develop and have, take a page from the Titans book where it's like maybe have, Goff play Tannehill and Richardson play Malik Willis and not invest anything too heavy in quarterback and just try to build out the rest of that roster.
I think the real what's going to happen is we're going to get this like carousel, and it's going to be Tom Brady's going to go to the Niners, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go to the Jets, and then Trey Lance is going to get traded to the Giants, and that's going to be the world. And that Trey Lance is going to be the running threat that they need, because we know he's a powerful runner. And we've seen this dude. He can launch that football. So maybe
I don't think
that's
they trade Trey Lance unless something crazy happens. I think it's a pretty unlikely, but
yeah, I think it's unlikely. But it's maybe on the table. It's maybe on the table, but who knows?
I think with the Giants, you can fix up everything around Daniel Jones, and it will improve. Like I don't disagree. There's other things to improve that could work, but eventually I think you'll run into the problem of. I just don't think they have that high level of a quarterback. And I'd at least like to give I understand there's not like, well, then just go get yourself a top quarterback prospect. I say, oh, okay. But get yourself somebody who at least has the potential to be sitting behind Daniel Jones if you want to give that to him. And don't give him a 4-year deal, give him a 2 or 3.
Right. Don't make him, whatever, just use Ryan Tannehill. I really do think he can be like Ryan Tannehill. But again, like who cares? Who cares if he could be Ryan Tannehill? Like, really? But just be aware.
What does that do for me, man?
Right. It makes you make you the 1 seed in the AFC if your team is good enough. But
and if your coach is great.
They do. They might have one.
Wouldn't you feel better watching your team not having to trick yourself into thinking that your team's ceiling isn't capped because of your quarterback? Right. Wouldn't you like to not spend the 2 years on Twitter you're going to have to go through doing that?
I just think like it's tough to draft a quarterback this year because it's such an untalented roster from top to bottom that you just can't trade up. You can't trade up. You can't give up picks when your roster is in this state. Like maybe you can draft a project in the later rounds, but you can't trade up. And all the quarterbacks that'll be there when they pick in the middle of the first round, they're not going to be the guys that you probably want. So
then you get to the Falcons, and I mean, I would say the solution's on the roster. But
I would say so too, honestly.
Really?
I would just roll with I'd roll with Ritter. Why the hell not?
I kind of don't disagree. It's like, I understand the 3rd round pick, but this guy went to Cincinnati. He's going to get a chance to start at the end of the season here, except maybe he never will because he's in a division that's too bad to ever take them out of the playoff race. What it seems like the Falcons are doing is it's like Mariota, no matter what, barring injury, until we are eliminated. And that sucks because they won't get eliminated. And it's like, you don't need to see a ton of games from Ritter. Give me 6 games. If he looks Davis Mills when he was playing all right level, you can roll with him for another year. And if you stink, not a big deal. You gave yourself a reasonable chance to have a good quarterback next season. And if it doesn't work out, the consolation prize is maybe a very, very good quarterback and a very talented quarterback class. But if he doesn't get a chance, it is tough to be like, our starting quarterback is this 3rd rounder. I don't think I don't think they're not going to do that. I think they also have a lot of room to improve in their roster. And I think they need to use their draft picks on like non-quarterback positions. I also think that the Falcons ask so little of Mariota that even if Ritter isn't great, he can probably do the easy, basic stuff they want him to do. So the disaster potential is probably a little bit lower if Ritter is even an okay quarterback. And I think Ritter will be at least all right. I think he'll at least be a top 50 quarterback.
I mean, how many guys can't, like, Bailey Zappi stepped in when Mac Jones was
right.
hurt.
And I like Ritter. I do. And he's got tools. So
yeah, I mean, he can. I've seen Mariota multiple times this year throw less than 15 passes a game. Ritter can Ritter can do that.
Invest in the offensive line and then give Ritter a shot to do that if he looks good.
Or the defense, really. This is the 14th ranked offense by EPA per play right now. Nothing too shabby considering who their quarterback is. And they've got Mariota on a 1-year deal. They can move on from him next year without much like fuss or implications on the books. So with them, I do think the solution is on the roster. I think at some point you give Ritter a shot. I think Arthur Smith's job is, relatively safe. I think he's done a decent job for a team that a lot of people thought would be the worst in football this season. And, they're nothing too crazy, but the offense is at least like moving a little bit with the running game, which is obviously fantastic.
They're working with what they've got. They are doing good. He is doing a good job despite the record.
Right. So they're doing so I think like if you're Arthur Smith, you're not someone like, Matt Rule coming into this season where it's like, well, if we're not good, I'm gone. So I need to do something desperate. Like you can move on from Mariota. You can draft a really talented guy in the first round who's not a quarterback. Start the talented Ritter, who was, I think, our QB1 of the draft. Like he's someone who read the field relatively well. Someone who, once again, maybe can be Tannehill-esque. I think that's not an unreasonable expectation. And Tannehill is a lot better than Mariota, I think, is. So, like, even if you get that level quarterback of play from him, he's someone who I definitely trust a lot more in the drop back game, which they just don't ask Mariota to do. They're not going to ask him to just drop back and pick up a defense apart and throw it. No, it's all going to be play action. They have the lowest neutral down pass rate in the league. I do think Ritter almost right away is smart enough to give you something a little bit more than that and open up your passing offense a little bit more. So, like, who knows what, and obviously if he comes in this year and maybe just absolutely sucks, that changes things. But like maybe even if you don't see any Ritter this year, I think next year you could just be like, they seem to like him. I mean, they said like, oh, he's light years ahead of where rookies usually are. And I believe that, honestly. He's a really, really bright guy. So
I hope so.
We'll
man.
see.
I hope he turns out so bad, man. I really love him. And I think he's at least got the tools to be what it'll make it interesting. I think it will.
He ran a 4.5. He ran like a 4.5 at the combine.
He's got a solid arm. I think his arm is not bad at all.
Yeah, it's not great, but he's not horrible. He reminds me a little bit of Trevor Lawrence, honestly. That was kind of he's like group of 5 Trevor Lawrence, where like all he did was win in college, and he's kind of skinny and tall, and his accuracy can be like, he could be scattershot, but he's twitchy and he's pretty fast. He's kind of deceptively fast, I think. He's got maybe not a crazy arm. I think Lawrence's arm is a little better, but like his arm strength is pretty good, and he goes through reads at a pretty high level, I think, for his age. I think, and his poise, his footwork in the pocket is pretty good. So a lot of the things I liked about Lawrence, he's like group of 5 Lawrence. Like if you eliminated the Power 5, like the SEC and all that from in the ACC and Pac-12 from existence, it was just the group of 5. People would look at Ritter like a god for what he did at Cincinnati. I think he's like Power 5 or group of 5 T-Law, which is very much
he really did never lose at home.
He just won. Just like
he's just a winner, and he's got it factor.
Yeah, I think I would just roll with Ritter next year. I really do. They're not going to have the draft pick to like. I don't think they should trade up. I think they have the offense. If he stinks, you can draft a guy in 2024. If he stinks, you'll be then you'll be there. So, but I think he's worth giving a shot at some point, either this year or next, and see what you got.
And then obviously like the Texans, Lions, Panthers, they're basically just in kind of this like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud.
They're the Levis Stroud.
Yeah.
And Levis is going to go that
drafting
high.
Guys. They're drafting guys this year. The only question I could is maybe the Panthers love Corral and they're like, oh,
I just don't think if they're going to be in the level, like right now, if you look on Tankathon, there's a very reasonable chance that they get one of those three guys. They would take one of those three guys. I promise they don't love Corral like that, because if they did, they would have taken him in the second round, or they would have, they would have done.
Well, we were just talking about how the Falcons are going to start Ritter, who is a third rounder. Well, so
Ritter also looked better, and he didn't go 1 for 9 and then tear his Achilles, and I think he was a better prospect.
I don't disagree. I am not judging a player off 9 preseason passes, I'm afraid.
You're right, but I do think that Ritter was a better prospect than Corral, but maybe they do. Maybe they do. And the difference is they have a top 5 pick, and they'll
be getting a new coach. I think is the other big difference.
Although with the schedule, maybe it's not unreasonable to think that the Panthers could pass up the Falcons here in record towards the end. But at any rate, the way it stands now, I did a little mock draft this morning, and I had the Panthers taking Stroud, and I had the Lions taking Levis, and I had the Texans taking Bryce Young.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was at. I think Levis gets a lot of hate, but he's going to be he's going to get drafted that high. He just is. I'm sorry. He's big. He is tough. He is, again, pretty twitchy. He's someone who can make guys miss and kind of bounce off tacklers. He's got a big arm. He can throw it with velocity, touch. His accuracy isn't great, but I don't think it's necessarily horrible. Look, Jordan Love went in the first round. What did he do his senior season? He had 14 touchdowns, 9 picks in the Mountain West at Utah State. He was a first round pick because of tools. Right. All right. Trey Lance probably completed 90 passes in his entire college career. He probably completed, I should have looked this up. It's probably 90 passes his whole college career. But he's still got a generational trade package because of tools. Justin Herbert, really, the dialogue around Justin Herbert coming out of Oregon was not different than Will Levis right now. As good as Justin Herbert is now, people hated that pick. People really did not like. They're like, "Why are you drafting this?"
Despised Herbert. They're like, he's not a winner. It was a bunch of
his
stuff.
Senior season was bad. He's not accurate. He's Jake Locker. He's just this toolsy guy that you're going to miss on, like Paxton Lynch or something like that. He really was not a favorite in the draft community. He really was not. So, and there's a lot of the same issues.
Herbert wouldn't be a terrible comp.
It's really not. I mean, I don't think he's going to be as good as Herbert, but Kentucky, his wide receivers aren't very good this year. I think the line is messing up a decent amount, and he's dealing with free rushers a decent amount of time. But he's taken some big licks this year. His pocket poise isn't great, but I think he has a reason to be nervous right now. He's got a lot of traits. I mean, when you look at the size, the arm strength, the toughness, the ability to go through reads, I think is there. I've seen it. It's not consistent, but it's there. You think that it's coachable. And he's going to go. He's going to go high. He's got the things. He had a 4.0 grade at Xavier. I just realized this about him, that he had offers from Harvard and shit. He's very smart guy, tough guy, and talented guy. And although the results weren't really there were some throws where, he's staring down a guy and just tries to fit it in there anyway. But the problem is, all that seemed to be there for him when I watched this Kentucky offense is kind of tight window throws. The wide receivers, I just don't think it was supposed to be easy. He plays in a very Shanahan and McVay type of system, and that's supposed to be easy. Things really do not look easy with the supporting cast around him at Kentucky this year. And I think he's trying to force some things, but he's aggressive and he's talented. And if you're the Lions, who I mocked him to, that kind of gives you what Goff doesn't. That kind of gives you that kind of talent and that kind of toughness and that kind of aggressiveness, really, and willingness to fit it into.
It feels like a Lions pick.
It feels like a culture fit. It feels like he offers a different skill set than what they have right now. Which Stroud, I think Stroud can be good, but all the things that made Goff the number 1 overall pick is, I think, kind of the traits that Stroud has. And maybe that's why I mocked him to the Panthers after Levis, where it's the Panthers just need anything. Maybe Darnold balls out the rest of the season, but you can take a guy. They have a good offensive line right now. They're going to probably get a new offensive coach at least. And, maybe you just need an accurate player who could just execute an offense. Cause right now Darnold. And so like Stroud makes sense, I think, for them, considering like what they need and the upgrades that they need. And then I think Bryce Young, which we've talked about, is the best guy overall and the best at maybe carrying a bad. He has the most intangibles, the most creativity, and probably would be the guy you trust the most to deal with pressure and develop in a bad situation like Houston. So that's kind of where I've mocked the top three. I don't know if you guys disagree or have thought about who goes where at all since the last time we talked about this, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I think you're trying to fit player to player a little bit too, player to team a little bit,
maybe
too
a
much.
little
like
bit too. I just did a mock, and I think that those kind of make sense.
If the Panthers like Levis or whoever more, that's who they'll probably end up taking. I think that Levis has become pretty severely underrated. I tweeted about this the other day. Oh my God, I don't think there's a single person on Twitter who likes him right now. And it's kind of ridiculous. I think people, it's like he's got some things to clean up, and it's like you will always win overall if you look at any quarterback coming out of college, point out anything that they struggle with and say, well, that's not ever good. That's the whole player all in one. This quarterback stinks. Like, yeah, you're going to be right like 90% of the time. It's hard to find a franchise quarterback. But I don't really get that so much. I think people are still too concerned with the stats. I mean, oh my God, this is why aren't you throwing this and this and this? I like him pretty decently. I'm not saying that he's my number one quarterback or anything, although I haven't watched everybody enough to really say. But I think I might have him over Stroud.
I don't have him above Young. I'll say that. I might have him over Stroud as well. I really might. And people said this about Allen. People said this about Allen. People said this about Herbert. People said this about Love. And people said this about Lance to some degree, is like, well, you're just betting on the trait. Like, look at and I guess Lance had really good stats, but he didn't play his sophomore year. And the only game he did play or his second year. And the only game he did play was kind of a disaster.
Lance is different because he was just so inexperienced.
Right. So we'll see. But people say that there have been two of the best quarterbacks in the league, Herbert and Josh Allen, were not favorites in the pre-draft process because their stats look bad and they made some really stupid decisions, and their low light reel was long and it really looked bad. And Levis is kind of the same way, but there is reasons to like him. Everything, when you just describe the type of talent that he is, the NFL teams will say, sign me up. And I get why.
Yeah.
We got to get him back on the show during the pre-draft process.
I love that.
We do. And we'll make him
the other guy.
Make sure not to bring mayonnaise this time. But
the other guy is Hendon Hooker, and he is just in such a bad spot. I feel so bad for him. The combination of his age plus the fact that he does not play in a pro-style offense plus the fact that he now has a torn ACL. I mean, the wait time on him to get up to speed is going to be like till he's 27, 28.
I think he could fall ridiculously
I think he's a high third for a team that's like, we need a quarterback maybe 2 years from now. That's what I think. But with no pre-draft process and so many, like, there's actually kind of a decent number of B-tier round 2 possible guys this season, when oftentimes I feel like there's not. He could be down there.
I could definitely see people like him in the day 3 and people be like, man, remember when everyone forgot about him. I definitely could see that happen.
He's almost like Corral in that sense. Yeah. And Corral went at 97. That's where I see him. He will be a compensatory 3rd round pick. And he's got tools, like he can move and he has a nice arm, but the offense that he runs is just like not that pro style. And now he's going to be hurt. Yeah, that's where I see him at. But maybe he's older, so maybe lower.
Yeah, guys like perhaps Richardson, Bo Nix, Tanner McKee. We haven't talked about teams like the Colts or Washington. I do think maybe Washington will just bring back they'll just bring back Heineke.
That's what I guess.
That's what my guess would be. And I think the Colts, like the Bucks, could be a team that kind of needs a young talent. They've traded for so many vets at this point. Like, I just don't know if that's like for Ballard, who is somehow staying around, still an option. So they could be a team I could see pretty aggressively trying to trade up. I could definitely see that for them. We haven't talked about them, or they might be in the second round Bo Nix sweepstakes or Penix or McKee or whoever that is. So I could definitely see that as well. So I think that's about all the teams who really need. We haven't talked about Geno and the Seahawks, but I think Geno will be back on a franchise tag.
I think that's foregone. It wouldn't be insane if it wasn't that.
Yeah.
I think
he will start for them next year.
There is a chance. I mean, they probably have a good shot at drafting one of the top 3, Levis, Stroud, and Young, because they have the Broncos pick, and the Broncos are hot garbage. So maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I think Geno has played well enough to certainly get franchise tag, and
there's
it would be kind of a betrayal to let him walk, honestly, after giving him the shot and having him take full advantage. So
yeah.
All
right, that's how the quarterback carousel is going to play out this offseason. Guarantee it. We get nothing wrong ever. So everything will go exactly as we have foretold. But that pretty much wraps things up for us. As always, tons of content coming away on all platforms. Again, make sure you tune into the AMP Live this Thursday. We'll be given our Stay Hot Locks, Game of the Week, all that good stuff. Go into your app store, download the AMP app by Amazon, search up Stay Hot, follow us, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. But until then, as always, from Corn Boy, Bird Boy, and Lemon Boy, we will catch you all on the flippity flop.